Hey guys, Darren Carr here, coach of Position Pods, and welcome to the final preseason episode of 2025. It's lockout week, and fantasy is just around the corner to be kicked off on Thursday nights. It feels like it's sort of crept up on us, hasn't it? With a bucket load of action over the last 2 or 3 weeks, with your practice games, the community series, and no bigger than the opening round, which we had just over the weekend. Whether you love it or you hate it, real footy was back. And the fantasy season has practically kicked off with a few of the players that we are looking to start getting a bit of a leg up with some scores alongside their name, and now with some prices set to rise over the next week. So on today's episode, I will be reviewing the opening round games, which is only 2, so it should be fairly short, and discussing all the players that we should be looking at in each of those games and who we should be looking to start in our fantasy side. So let's get into it. So we will start with the Friday night game between Sydney and Hawthorn, where my Hawks got the win over in Sydney, which is a pleasant surprise as a Hawthorn supporter. I thought we were not going to get this game done, but I'm glad to see the boys got up and about. But back to fantasy. Who are the players that we were looking at? And you can't go past Matty Roberts being the first one that we need to talk about today. He has firmly locked himself into our sides, in my opinion. You know, a huge 104 from 20 kicks, 6 handballs, and 9 marks. And I'll be honest, I wasn't a huge fan of him. I haven't been all preseason, just with a few concerns that I had with him. With some big... Towards back end of the season, I wasn't super keen on him just because the way that he went about it. A few key names were out back in last year. But he has firmly snuck his way into my team over the last couple of weeks just due to some limited options back there. And obviously with the price expected to rise in the next week or two, obviously he's got this score in his price range now. He is going to go up, and I think this is what he can do. He was just super consistent all day. And the thing that pleased me the most in this game, that it wasn't like he was absolutely racking up and having cheap possessions all the time. He just got involved. He kept ticking his score over throughout the game. He only took the 1 kick in, which is a little bit of a concern, but he got the ball off of the kick in a fair bit. So that gave him the extra +6, so I have no concerns there. Blakey did take the 10, so I don't expect that to be super consistent. Matty Roberts will take a few more every now and then. It just gives me a lot more confidence that what we saw towards the end of last year is probably a good representation of what to expect from him. So he probably can be that 95 to 100 guy for us. Break even of 54 now, so he is going to get a nice price jump coming round 1. So I think it's just someone we can lock into our sides, probably around that sort of D3, D2 sort of zone. What's the price at again? Yeah, around that sort of price range, and he can be someone we can hold for a little while in our sides. I don't see him being someone that we need to absolutely trade out for a while, potentially even into the mid-season buys. So lock him in. I think he's an easy one to pick. I didn't mean to do that. The next person we need to talk about who was on our radar was Angus Sheldrick. And he was super disappointing. Unfortunately, I was pretty hot on him all preseason. Everything looked like it was lining up for him to have a breakout season. You know, with the injuries that they have in the midfield stocks, he just looks like he's going to get a roll on there. But unfortunately, he was super quiet in the first half, particularly in that second quarter where he scored a -1. Besides that, he did all right. I think he went 18 and 15 points, which times that by 4, he would have had a 60, which priced at 44. You'd potentially take that. Definitely would have been a lot more of an interesting conversation if that had happened. But unfortunately, now with a 32 in his price cycle, he's only going to go down in price. Or it looks like he's just going to be the sub each and every week. He had low time on ground, even when he played in the first half. So yeah, I just don't think we can pick him anymore, so he is one that we can fade. However, there is an interesting scenario that Taylor Adams is out with an injury, with a significant hamstring damage, so that that does secure him in the side even further. But I think it's probably one we wait and see now. You watch how he goes in the first couple games. If he starts to smash it, then we can jump on at a later stage when his price is still going to be fairly low due to this 32 he has in his price cycle. So fading for now, but still keep an eye on there. Corey Warner was another rookie that we were looking at to see if he could get off to a flyer. I don't think he did enough with his 42 score there, so I just think we have other options in that forward 50 line of ours that are cheaper, so I don't think we'll be going there. The only other interesting pick that came from this game, particularly from the Sydney side, was Sam Wicks, I think is his name. He scored the 74 points in this new halfback role, playing as a sort of a lockdown defender on the small. He played an amazing game. He locked down Nick Watson all day. He didn't allow him to get a goal at all, so he just had a phenomenal game, and it looks like that's what he's going to do each and every week. But are we expecting him to be a consistent guy right back there, being that 74? I don't think so. I personally think he will struggle every now and then, particularly playing this lockdown role. It only takes one bad game and he could potentially be out of the side, so it is a bit of a risk in that sense. But I also think these lockdown defenders aren't particularly good at fantasy scoring. So I think there's going to be days where he, scores a 50, and that's going to have very limited upside for him. He does have this nice 74 in his break even, so a braver coach than me could absolutely go ahead and do it. The other factor I think is that I'm struggling to fit anyone else in my forward 50. Honestly, we've already got sort of 5 guys we've locked in there with your McRae's, your Smiths, your Daniels, your Sanders, and your Garcias, just to name a few. Then you can throw in a Hornbag or a Rankin at your F1. Where are you putting Wicks? Unless you're going an absolutely mid-price, rookie price sort of forward line, which I won't bag, but it could definitely go the wrong way if you go too deep in there. So I just don't see a world where I can fit him in my forward 50. I think my forward 50 has been locked down for the best part of a month now. So I think there's just no way I can fit him in, and I think he's too expensive to be on the bench. So I'll pass on this one. But yeah, like I said, I think a braver coach could definitely go ahead and do it. Moving over to the Hawks, and where do you stop? You go Will Day. He is the next generation Bont, and I know I'm a bit of a Hawks biased here, but I love what he is able to bring. He's obviously someone that I have heavily spoken about throughout the preseason. Obviously, I've been pretty keen on him for a big chunk of this preseason. You only have to go back to my pre-practice match team reveal where I had him in my team. However, he did make his way out of my team following the Community Series game where he spent majority of the game forward, and we just got sort of dominated in that game, so it did scare me off a little bit. And a few other options put their hand up, so he did spend a little bit of time out of my side between now and then, but he has firmly placed himself back into my side after this incredible game with the 129, 19 disposals in the first half with 3 goals to his name, plus a few marks and tackles alongside that for a massive 96 points at halftime. He was just absolutely everywhere. However, he did get clamped in the third quarter by James Jordan. He spent a big portion of that quarter getting checked out on the bench with just a bit of a twinge to his knee in a marking contest. So there's been no news come out of it to say that he is a risk, but he should be good to go. I have no concerns with that. He only spent 45% TOG in that third quarter, so he had a bit of a low score in that one. I think he only had the 9 points in that game, so this could have been absolutely massive. He did come on for the fourth quarter and play out that entire quarter, about 80% TOG, so he was absolutely good to go in that final term. And then he scored the average 24 points from 5 touches and a couple of tackles while being tagged in that fourth quarter. So overall, a very nice game for Will Day. It's a cheat code. I think we just lock him in. We're not overthinking it too much. Yes, there are going to be some concerns with him potentially being tagged because he is by far our clearest best player. Particularly in that midfield, he's going to be very damaging. So I could see him getting a bit of attention over the next couple of weeks. The Hawks go Essendon, Carlton and GWS before their round 4 bye. Each 3 of those games, I could potentially see a a run with role or even a tag come his way. So Durham for Essendon does that sort of run with role, making a bit accountable. It'll be interesting to see if he's good to go and if he's going to be playing a midfield role for Essendon, because we know with preseason they've been chopping and changing their midfield quite a bit. For Carlton, you've got Chin Cotter. Whether he's good to go for that game will be interesting. He hasn't really played any of the preseason at all. And he's on the injury list at the moment as a hip, and he's to be continued. So there's no certainty he's going to be there for round 2, I believe it is. So, but I wouldn't be surprised if they stick someone else on him in that midfield. Someone will run with him. So, they'll be fine. I reckon that game he'll be okay. The next one is the concerning one, which is the GWS Toby Bedford. We obviously know he is a great tagger. We only need to look at the next game we're going to be reviewing today in Nick Dacos and look at what he did to him. So he is one of the best taggers in the league. So that is one to be concerned about. But I don't think it's enough that we're going to be scared off of Will Day, honestly. I think he's going to get a lot of price jump in the next 2 or 3 weeks. With this massive 129 in his price cycle, priced at 74, he's going to easily make 50k next week, I would have thought. So, and potentially be a 90 guy for us for the year. So he's one that I'm definitely looking into my midfield at that price. The other thing that I'm pretty keen on is that James Worpel is done for a month now. He came up with the syndesmosis injury in his ankle, so he is done for 3 to 4 weeks. So that potentially means more midfield time for Will Day. It'll be interesting to see what type of dynamic they have in there with him, because he was clearly playing that fourth midfield role, rotating forward a lot of time, because he does have that attribute to go forward, whereas the other midfielders in Newcombe, Worpel, and Nash don't really have that ability to go forward as much as he does. So he was definitely playing that sort of role. I think he had, I'll just get it up real quick. He had the 16 CBAs. Obviously, Worpel went down in the second quarter, so that sort of bumped it up a fair bit. So it'll be interesting to see how that role suits him. Obviously, if he plays a bit more midfield, he will get more points available to him, which is what the main concern was when we saw it in the community series. So I think it's all coming up all day at the moment. I think you just lock him in, and I think the community have done that as well, because I think he's up to like 40% owned at this point in time, so 45% owned. So yeah, jump on board. I think this is one you don't want to miss out on. It would be a brave decision to go against him, I believe. The other person that we were keeping an eye on was James Sicily. He was excellent in the first half, and he was firmly in my team at that point. He was just that halfback distributor, and he was doing what he does, being that intercepting role, and he, as we all know he can do, he absolutely racks in there. He had the 56 points at half time, just looking off the halfback. He then did get a tag in the third quarter by Hayward, who restricted him a fair bit just to 7 points, which was hugely disappointing, and is something that we have known previously, is that Sicily cannot handle getting someone giving him attention. Then he got thrown forward in the fourth quarter, so which is something that we're probably just going to expect from now on in that final term each and every week. If the game is on the line, James Sicily is going to be the first one they throw forward. So don't be surprised when this happens in games coming up, especially with the Hawks having a tough run to start this season. There's going to be a lot of games that are quite tight, so I'm expecting him to be thrown forward a fair bit. And it could be even earlier in other games when they're particularly losing. They were winning this game at half time. Third quarter, Swans sort of came back, so in the fourth they just threw it forward just to sort of solidify the game quite early on. So I'm expecting to spend a bit more time forward. It is enough of a flag to be worried about him. But the thing is that he can still score up forward. He should have kicked 2 goals up there. He did hand one off stupidly in the goal square and gave me a bit of a heart attack, because that could have definitely gone wrong. But he should have scored a 25 in that final term if he didn't give that one off. So he's the man that they're passing to when he's up forward. So I have no concerns with the forward time, in my opinion. I think the main concern for me is the copping attention. With Hawks being a bit better, they're going to throw a player on him. It doesn't even need to be a tagger as the problem. It can just be someone that just stands next to him. Hayward is not a tagger. He's just someone that will stand next to Sicily, follow him around the ground, not allow him to get the cheap possessions off halfback to be that lethal kick into the midfield. So that's the concerning thing for me, and I think that's something that a lot of teams are going to do a lot more often. So for those sort of reasons, I'm fading for now. I think even more just the price his break even's gone slightly up to 92 when he's priced at 87. He's only going to go down unless he has a massive game next week against Essendon. So it's something that I'm probably just going to wait and see, and just fading for now, unfortunately. The other Hawk that we want to mention is Leakey. He was absolutely dominant in the midfield in the ruck contest against Grundy. Grundy looked absolutely awful and looked underdone, to be honest. He only scored the 69, and I think he's just a little bit washed, unfortunately. He just didn't look like he had the fitness behind him. Leakey scored the 110, and I guess quickly for those ones that are keen on looking at him, he continued his great form from last year. He could take his game to a new level, but I just don't think it's something that I could do in Classic this year. I think he's more of a super coach ruckman because he does get those hit outs to advantage a fair bit, and he just probably doesn't do enough of the fantasy easy stuff to get those big scores consistently. I want to see more tackles. I want to see a few more marks around the ground, and especially more disposals would be nice. Pushing his disposals up to the 20 mark would be fantastic. But yeah, not relying on 2 goals each and every week would be something that I would look at. The only other Hawk that I would probably want to mention in this one is Cam Mackenzie. With Worpel being out of the side, Cam Mackenzie potentially comes into calculations for us. Priced at 58, he is a bit more of an expensive pick, sort of around that Hollands, Peatling sort of that price tag. He is probably going to get a bit more of the CBAs come in these couple of weeks with Worpel out. He only had the 1 CBA in the 4th quarter, and he had 3 in the 3rd quarter. So he is clearly that going to be that 4th midfielder for Hawks over the next couple of weeks, 3 or 4 weeks. So he could get off to a bit of a run here and there, but it is a tough run for Hawks specifically, and I just don't know what his ceiling is going to be, particularly at that price range. He could probably only be a 75 guy, in my opinion, alongside Will Day and Newcomb. So probably one I will just not be starting, but I will be keeping close eyes on to start the season if he can get up to an absolute flyer. Moving over to the second game, we have the GWS Giants versus Collingwood. GWS absolutely smacked Collingwood quite convincingly. It was a tight, contested game in the first half, but then Collingwood just ran out of legs and they just looked unfit and looked old and slow. So, which was quite surprising to see. There, I guess the guys that we got to talk about is for GWS, you got to start with Finn Callahan. He was elite in this game. 33 disposals, 2.2 goals for a score of 110. He was absolutely everywhere. Playing that full-time midfield role. It's priced at 77 to start the season. He could go to a new level this year, giving him those keys in the midfield. It could be that breakout season we've all been waiting for the last couple of years. He's a previous pick 3, only maybe 3 or 4 years ago now. So his break even is now a low of 50. So he's going to get a big price jump to start the season, especially because he's got Melbourne to start the season. So that could be a quite juicy matchup. But then he does have the round 2 bye. The thing that concerns me a little bit is obviously he's got the round 2 bye. Tom Green is likely to come back following that bye, so that means he takes that mantle as number 1 pick in there. That's going to take a lot of points off Callahan, particularly being that accumulator in there. However, it's going to push out Kelly first and foremost. Kelly's going to go back to a wing. That's no question mark. Callahan will still be an inside mid. It's just, is there still going to be enough points for Callahan to rack up as he did in this game to be that, 90 to 95 guy that we need him to be, priced at 77 to be a worthwhile pick? It's pushing it for me. This felt like this should have been a 130 game for him. He kicked 2 goals, had the 33 disposals. He just didn't do enough of the other stuff, the marks, tackles. Only having 4 marks, only having 2 tackles. It probably felt like it should have been bigger, in my opinion. So when when Green comes back, he's probably going to dominate this space and take a lot of those possessions off of him. So that's where I sort of have my doubts over what his ceiling is going to be. So for those sort of reasons, I'm not looking at starting him, but absolutely, I think others could go there. You jump on the price jump. He's going to get a good amount of cash generation over the first 3 or 4 weeks. Even post their buy, he could go very well. So he's definitely someone that you could look at a cheaper price next to Will Day. Could lock those two away quite simply. Just for me, I'm just a bit more skeptical on how long his ceiling's going to get there, and obviously with a few other names coming back, I just don't know if the consistency is going to be there for me just yet. A few other rookies that we were looking at in this game was Connor Stone and James Leake. Now, both were okay in respective, both scored okay. Both were okay without being amazing, I should say. So Connor Stone scored the 50 while Leake scored the 42. I think Connor Stone's the obvious one we just lock away on our forward benches, obviously at 230k forward. He is secure as secure can be in that defensive 50 for the GWS Giants. He's going to be a solid sort of 50 to 60 each and every week, be a bit of a slower burn. He's not going to be an absolute accumulator, but he is definitely someone that I've locked away on my field. He has no concern with the role at all. James Leake is a tougher decision and is tougher selection in our sides because while he scored the 42, he did that on a low 54% tog on the ground. So, and the role looked pretty good as well. He was clearly playing as that fourth midfielder. It's just the main concern, obviously, at tog, and it's highly expected that he probably would have been subbed out in this game if it wasn't for Briggs being injured early on in that first term. So that's the concern for me. He's not going to get off to an absolute flyer with 42 on his price cycle. I think his break-even's like up to a 7 or something like that. So he'll make some money, but not going to be enough to be an enormous pick for us. And the other thing is, like I said, Tom Green, not far away. Does that mean Leake instantly gets dropped from the team? Potentially. I think that obviously pushes everyone back in terms of he'll become that number one guy in there. Then everyone sort of just drops behind him, and obviously he was playing that fourth midfielder. He probably gets dropped out of that midfield rotation completely, if not out of the team. So you're probably only going to get one more game out of him, which will be next week, and then he won't be in the side anymore, and then his cash generation's dried up. So that's probably enough risk for me to just fade him to start the season. I just don't know if I can go there with that in mind. So I'm just looking at other areas at this point in time and looking to pay up elsewhere. A couple other options that put their hand up in this game that potentially we weren't looking at throughout the entire preseason, it must be said. Lockie Ash was probably the standout, 125. He had a massive second half, with 99 points. I just don't think it's something I can do. I know a few of the fantasy community are talking about it to be like, can you jump on him to give me a bit of cash generation guy for 3-4 weeks? I just don't think I can do it. He's been a consistent 75-85 guy for the best part of 4 years. I could potentially see some increase, particularly with Harry Perryman coming out of that side. There are some points available back there because Perryman was a 75 averaging guy back there. Stone is probably picking up 50 of that, so a little bit here and there. But this was just a game they were all over Collingwood, particularly in that second half. They were just doing as they pleased as they just ran them off their feet, and they were just not putting any pressure on. So I'm not expecting there's going to be any consistency here, so I'm not looking to do it any at all. So I'm fading him, but a braver coach than me could absolutely do it. Similarly with this next guy in Sam Taylor, he had a massive 118 from 17 disposals and a huge 17 marks. 13 marks, I should say. He has a break-even of -2 at the moment, which is unreal to think at. He has a price tag of 528k as a defender. So I guess the question is, can you ride his cash generation for the first couple weeks? I know a lot of other players are definitely doing it, and honestly, I'm definitely not opposed to it. It's the new age of fantasy where these sort of moves to start the season absolutely can pay off for you. If he can get off to an absolute fly, put up another 100 next week, and make 100 or even a bit more than 100k, come round 2, and then you can jump off of him after that if you're not keen on what he was going to do, then that's 100 extra K that you're going to be able to put on someone else's head instantly. And that can absolutely work out for you and get you off to an absolute flyer. That absolute cash generation can get you that one step ahead of the competition to start the season. So I can see a world where it absolutely works, but I can see the other side of the fence as well, where he could easily go back and drop a 30 or a 40 next week, because that's what he does. We only have to look back at his scores back at the end of last year, where he dropped 30 and 40s quite consistently. And then he's only made maybe 30 or 40, 50K at most. And then you've got a forced trade come round 2, and then you've got really no way of going elsewhere because there's minimal options back there in the defensive line. So it's just playing with a lot of danger, but it is definitely an option that you could go with if you're not liking an SDK particularly. It definitely is another avenue that is a little bit cheaper there. I just don't think I could do it. It takes a braver coach than me to do it, so I just don't think I want to do that. And it just locks you into that sort of scenario where you've got a forced trade at some point, and you're sort of banking on that you're not going to have other forced trades, or we're going to have other mid-price options fail that we're going to have to switch and change throughout the first couple of weeks as well. So I just don't want to lock myself into those sort of scenarios. So I'm fading that one. The other rookie that we could potentially look at was Max Grzinski, if that's how you say it. He could potentially be the Seth Campbell of 2025. We all know what he did. He had a pretty big score in round 0, and then he became a pretty good cash generation guy for us throughout the season. He scored the 57 this week with 2 goals in mind. Even did some ruck relief duties, which was quite good to see. Obviously, with Briggs going down, I think he was kind of forced to do that. Unfortunately, I just don't think I could do it. I don't see him holding his spot with Hogan and McCarty coming back post their round 2 bye. So I think you're probably going to get 1 week out of him and get a double price rise. He does have a -5 break even, so he will make a bit of money. But again, I don't know if it's going to be something that we can consistently expect him to get games. He could play as that third tool if they want to. They already have Cadman in there, throw in Hogan, throw in McCarty, so maybe he'd be the 4th more than likely, but I think that's probably a bit of a stretch. They have a lot of small forwards that they need to slot into that forward line, particularly with Stringer coming back as well. I just don't see him holding his spot in there, so I'm not looking to go there, unfortunately. I think he could be someone that generates maybe 100K in the first week with a double price rise, but then you're not going to have anywhere else to go because he's not going to be in the side. So fading that, but that sort of does it for GWS. Moving over to Collingwood. Perryman was the star of the show and was surprisingly good. Like, I wasn't really expecting this from him because obviously I had my concerns with the practice in the Community Series game where he only had the 5 disposals in the first half in the Community Series, but he was just hunting the ball better than anyone else in this first quarter. Particularly, he had 10 disposals in Q1, which was very surprising. I didn't know if he had that in his caliber. But the thing was, Dacos caught a lot of attention in this game. Obviously, Bedford tagged him, so they had to really force someone else to get the pill, and this is absolutely what I expected. When Dacos gets attention, Perryman's sort of going to be that guy to, rather than be that defensive midfielder, you get the ball, son, you get it out, and you be that main guy in there alongside him. So I'm pretty bullish on what he can do. Obviously, he should have gone bigger in this game. He scored the 90, but he had 25 disposals at 3/4 time with a score of 84. He only had a 6-point final turn where he was rested at halfback, which when GWS were all over him. So I think Collingwood have come out and acknowledged that was probably the wrong move to rest him on halfback, because they just lost the midfield contest every single time in that final term without him in there, with Dacos obviously being on the bench with that terrible calf that terrible cramp he had. So they just lost all their structure, and I think they've come out and said that he should have been in there. So this should have probably been a 105 game for him. So I do see a world where he is going to do that a little bit. And the other thing that pleased me a little bit is that he only had the 3 tackles. That's probably going to be his lowest tally the entire year. I wouldn't be surprised if this is going to be his lowest tally for the entire year. So I think he's locked himself into our D50s quite comfortably. Yes, he's got the early buy, but he's got the cash generation built in now. He's probably going to be a 90-95 guy that we can just lock away in our defensive lines for, 6 to 12 weeks, depending on how good he goes and whether other options pop up. Obviously, Dacos is going to get a lot of attention throughout the next 4 or 5 weeks, as we have mentioned. So he's just going to be able to get the ball a fair bit and hopefully bump up those tackle numbers a bit more and provide us some decent cash generation and points on field. Darcy Cameron was the other one that we need to talk about with a massive score of 136, which I believe was the biggest score of the weekend. Although it was against a second-rate ruckman in Keefe, obviously Briggs went down in the first half with a concussion. Luckily, it wasn't a broken neck. That did look terrible. But he's now got a break-even of 64, so he's going to make a bit of coin to start the season, particularly because he's coming up against Sweet and English in the next 2 weeks before their round 3 bye. So he could get up to an absolute flyer if you could ride his cash for a couple of weeks and look to upgrade him at some other stage to the top 2 guys. Particularly if you're worried about the top 2 guys, like your Cherries and your Gawns or your Marshalls, particularly. If you're not comfortable with either of them, you could start with a Cameron and just ride him until round 3 or 4 to see the dust settle, see where everyone's sort of lining up, see what happens, particularly with Romar. What's his role going to be? Is he going to be playing more forward? Is Cherry going to continue his form, or is he going to drop in price a little bit with a tougher run to start the season? Same with Max Gawn. Is he a potential risk of being rested every now and then with Campbell in the side? I don't see too many concerns, but it's definitely an avenue I could see going down. He's going to make probably 50k for the next 3 or 4 weeks, if not even a bit more, if you can get another big score like this. And then it's only a really small jump from, he's priced at 1.05 million to top guys that are probably only 100k difference from him there. So definitely can see that happening, and definitely an avenue that I have explored. I just don't know if I'm comfortable enough to do that. The other factor that I wanted to mention in this one is that Briggs is down. Briggs has gone for the next game. So who is up against Keefe to start the season? And that would be Max Gawn. So this could be a 150 inbound. So that does play with my mind a little bit when it comes to the age-old question of, do you go Gawn or do you go Cherry to start the season, or do you go both? Because we both have red flags on either of them. Both of them have great opening rounds, with Cherry against English and Max Gawn now against Keefe. Gawn's in the best shape of his life, apparently, and he's got a pretty decent run to start the season. Does chop and change a fair bit, but he could get up to an absolute flyer. We know what he's been able to do. He's been a 120 guy for us previously, even the back end of the start of last season. So it definitely plays on my mind. Is it worth it to start a TDK now with the option of a Gawn to get off to an absolute big score to start the season? Definitely something I'll be weighing up. Josh Dacos was also good again in that halfback role, but unfortunately didn't hit his break even, so I'm fading now. He's going to go down in price unless he has a big game in the second week. I think this was just more of a team thing. The team didn't help him out to give him the disposals. He was clearly the disposal winner of the day and worked hard for every single minute of this game. So I have no issues with his role, but it's probably just not someone I'm looking to jump on just yet. It's something I'll keep a close eye on, because I do believe that he can be a top 6 defender for us given the opportunity, and I do think he's got the opportunity in this role. I just think with Houston set to return, I want to see it alongside him, and obviously I need Collingwood to perform a lot better than what they did in this game. So until then, I'm just going to fade him for now. Obviously, he's at a big price range of 95 in the midfield as well. I was a very skeptical pick to begin with, but it's definitely someone, if he can get defender status early on, definitely one I'll be keeping an eye on. Nicky Dacos, quickly just keep an eye on him. He will be very cheap for us very shortly. The 60 in his price range will make him plummet his price quite quickly. I think he will even drop a 60k next week, even if he has a decent score. So we've spoken about the tags that he's going to get in the first opening round. So he's going to be cheap for us. So be prepared to jump on quite quickly when he starts to bump up his score and starts to meet his break even again. He will be someone that you want for the year. He's going to be around that sort of top 4 midfielders for the year, so keep an eye on him. And finally, Reef McGuinness was the other option that we sort of were keeping an eye on in this game, just with his new halfback role. I just think with his elevated price tag of 324k, it's too expensive for the forward bench, and I just don't think he's got the scoring capacity back there. I just think we have other cheaper options that are 100k cheaper than him that have the same capacity to go that price, if not exceed that scoring potential. So I'm not going there. And again, Houston set to return. Is his role going to be secure? I potentially don't think so. They've already got, if you read out their list, you got Maynard, you've got Howe, you've got Quainer, you've got Darcy Moore, then you throw in Josh Dacos, Houston, and even a Crisps can go back there. There's so many guys that can go back in that defensive 50, so I just don't think I'm going there. It's very shaky at best, so. But that sort of does it for the opening round review. Hopefully I did that quick enough for you guys, better than the last week's video, but now we have all the pieces to the puzzle. We have all the pieces. Now we can make the best educated decisions for our fantasy teams to start the season. Look through your notes. Who has been the best performing players of the preseason who we have flagged to be one of these categories, whether it's the player has got a new role, they've got a new club, they're returning from a long-term injury, or they're returning from injury-affected games from last year. Just from Rosie, for example, he had a lot of injury-affected games, so he is undervalued based on what he would have done if he didn't have that many injured games. And finally, if you're struggling with some options, you could also pick a natural progression player. I'm not super keen on that, but it definitely is something you could do if you're struggling for options. A few tips for round 1 to come. Obviously, we should all be very professionals here, but Wednesday night we will get the first teams dropped for the Thursday night game between Carlton and Tigers. So that'll be our first look at who's going to be locking into our team that week. Thursday night, before that game starts at 6:20, we will get the team announcements for the rest of the games, including the Sunday games, which will be extended benches. Friday night, 5 p.m. or 5:30, I can't actually remember, but we will get the formal teams of the Sunday game, so they will reduce their squads back to the best 23. So we won't get the sub just off that one, but all the subs will be announced an hour before each of the games, so keep in mind and stay on your toes throughout the round 1. Obviously, this is just something that we're going to have to deal with each and every week, where you're going to be on your toes. Unfortunately, we're not going to get the formal lockout this year, but that's just the new way of playing fantasy, unfortunately, for those that don't really have as much time. But yeah, got to stay on your toes if you want to be a bit more competitive. Particularly in round 1, obviously, there's so much up in the air. We can't just absolutely lock someone in as a sub at this point in time. As the season goes on, we'll have a bit more of a pattern of who's going to be the sub here and there. So the other thing, it is going to be a rolling lockout, so we are going to be able to shuffle our team throughout the weekend as the games come and go. So stay on your toes there. But finally, please leave a like and subscribe. I hope you've all enjoyed the preseason content that you've had this year from me. It's been amazing. I've absolutely enjoyed it. It's definitely brought a different way of thinking for me. Probably taken my game to a new level, and the way that I take notes and the way that I process each and every one of those games, and all the content that I'm consuming myself has gone to a new level. So I do appreciate you guys for doing that as well. But hopefully I brought a different perspective to other content curators coming from a former winner. I think there's definitely value in that. But hopefully you guys are keen to stick around. There's plenty more to come throughout this season. I've got weekly videos of trade talk, captains, and team reviews throughout every single week. So hopefully you stick around and subscribe, and you are keen to see that each and every week. But most importantly, stay tuned for later this week. I will be giving you my team review on Wednesday night, so hopefully you can stick around for that, as I'll be giving you my team. You can take it as you will, but I'll be giving you all my secrets, and I won't be hiding anything. So go as you will. I'll catch you guys then. All right. Until then.